Okay, this is a brief attempt to show some of the diversity and density of food availability in Tokyo. Here you see Ginger, who is in front of us, walking a line through what appears to be a grocery store. And you can see me following her, trying not to look too suspicious, since a lot of these places don't technically allow photography, as far as I know. I am holding the camera close to my chest, trying to look as if I am not photographing anything, so you'll have to bear with us on that. But as you can see, this is a supermarket. It's a pretty simple supermarket, and in fact, it is just a small supermarket kind of annex that exists in the basement of many department stores, which is in fact where we are. We are in the basement of the Matsuya, which is a department store in Ginza, and this is basically the sub-basement, if you will. And as you can see, it's a pretty good grocery store. It's not huge or anything, but it's got plenty of stuff in it. And you can see Ginger kind of making her way through all the different parts of it. And pretty much the stuff that you'd find here is the same as stuff that you'd find in any supermarket, anywhere, similar in America and so on. Except some of the things are a little different. Vegetables are wrapped carefully and sort of, there are Japanese products that you wouldn't expect to find. But on the whole, it's basically the same as a supermarket. But what we're going to do here is Ginger's going to go up the escalator, as you can see, to what is the basement, not the sub-basement. And you can see where things start to get quite a bit different from what you'd expect to see anywhere else. So there was a supermarket where you could do supermarket shopping, but here we have what is essentially an entire department store floor, set up much the same way that a department store floor is set up, meaning there's lots of little counters with people manning them, almost as if they were selling perfume. But instead of selling perfume, they're actually selling food. And they're selling all kinds of food. They're selling pre-prepared foods. They're selling specialty foods. They're selling ingredients. Everything you can imagine, they're selling. And not only is one person selling them, but often there are multiple people. So you actually, on one floor of a department store, often have multiple people selling the same kinds of items, so you can pick the vendor that you want, the type that you want, and so on. Now you can see Ginger's walking relatively sprightly through here, and I'm, trying to keep up, but honestly, there's just too much stuff. It would take forever if we actually tried to slowly photograph the things in here. So we tried to just go through relatively quickly to give a sense of how much stuff there is. Just to kind of give you some perspective on what's there, you can see all the different things kind of laid out before you. I'll narrate what some of them are. So, to the left you have kind of a standard display case there. Well, I guess it's kind of hard to see, but there's a croquette section. So those are deep-fried foods. There's a bunch of hanging meats, so prosciuttos and stuff. They'll slice on demand. There's a fruit counter. This is a bread bakery. They bake it right there, and you can go in there and kind of select stuff on a tray and buy all the different kind of breads that you want. Here's a wine store on the right. So you've just got basically everything that you could possibly imagine kind of all stuffed into one space. It's pretty cool. And so, for the most part, if you were the type of person who was living and working in this area, you could literally do, all your meals of the day here if you wanted to. You could get stuff for cooking if you wanted to. You could buy pre-prepared meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You can do just about anything that you want to do. Is totally available here. Now, it's not always the best stuff. I mean, there's tons of great food in Tokyo, and there are tons of great restaurants in Tokyo, so you probably don't want to do all your food shopping here, but it's pretty amazing for people who come from a place that doesn't have anything like this to kind of see these things. So you can see now we're in a section that's for sort of a little more fancy wrapped gift, oriented stuff. These are often desserts or kind of specialty items that are made for giving as gifts. And you can see that the boxes are very elaborate and ornate and on display. And that's because those things are often kind of a pricier item that you might give to someone as a present, that sort of thing. Of course, that has never stopped me from buying them just for myself when they've looked interesting, but that's what that kind of section is. It's less about you buying your lunch and more about you buying a gift. Here we've kind of gotten in, there's a honey shop on the right. There is some coffee and jams. That looked like maybe a Baumkuchen shop or another kind of they often like these sort of spongy cake sorts of desserts. So you've got that sort of thing. And also there's all manner of things filled with onko, which is like a red bean paste. Those are everywhere. You can see the sponge cake to the left there, just going by. So you've got all kinds of stuff in here. Now, over there you can see there's sort of like a sweet shop on the right. You can see all the kind of prepackaged sweets. And on the left, this is like a cake shop. I don't know if you could quite see that there. We went by it kind of fast. But there's often, sort of lines of cakes. You can see Godiva was over there on the right. Here's another cake shop. And it's very common, like I said before, to have lots of different things that are, essentially the same shop. There'll be here's another cake shop. There'll just be tons of cake shops because, hey, they're, different bakers, and maybe you like one, maybe like another. Maybe one person specializes in cream puffs, another person specializes in strawberry shortcake. So, you want shortcake, you go to the shortcake guy, whatever. Those are fruit jellies are over on the right. Another cake shop. Can never hurt to have too many of those. And on the left, of course, there's Godiva again. We're sort of weaving our way through. Here you can see people making strawberry shortcake. Oftentimes, a lot of Depachikas will have, stuff made actually right there as opposed to being made elsewhere and brought in, depending on the item. Items where freshness is particularly valued, they'll often have right there. So that was a quick run through the Matsuya. Now, what Ginger's going to do here is she's just going outside, because remember, we're in the basement. All of this has been below ground, basically. What she's going to do is she just walked out of the exit that goes to the subway tunnels. Now, in Ginza in particular, but in a lot of places in Tokyo, the subway tunnels are extraordinarily extensive. And they're not like in the US where you just kind of walk down to a subway stop, and that's the extent of what was dug underground. In Ginza in particular, but in many places in Tokyo, the subway tunnels go for miles. Like, in Ginza, you can walk all the way between two totally different parts of town in spanning like a 30-minute walk without ever leaving the subway tunnels. We're not going to do that here because that would be a lot of tape. All she's doing is she's walking down into the subway tunnel, and now she's just going to walk 1 block, meaning like literally just crossing the street, to the department store on the other side of the street from the one we were just in. This one's called the Mitsukoshi, and you can see she's taking a left into it here, and she's going to walk down into their basement and sub-basement so you can see. Now, if you thought the one that we just walked through was nice, which I do, you're in for a treat here because Mitsukoshi, which is the one she's walking into now, is actually a much fancier Depachika. So you can see here, this has got the full-on, like, pimp-style, rim lighting, all of this stuff. It's, like, full-on fancy. All, like, high-quality surfaces and finish and all this stuff and the crazy lighting. So this one's a super fancy Depachi. You can see her kind of walking in the bread area now. This one is a pretty big bakery, but as you'll see, it's just one of many bakeries that's in this area. There's another bakery off to the right. There'll be 2 more bakeries downstairs when we go down there. Here's a fruit store, specialty fruit juices and stuff that was on the right there, and which has delicious fruits and jams and jellies and stuff like that, and also cut fruits. You can see here's a fruit store that just sells whole fruits, like specialty melons and apples, strawberry packs, that sort of thing. So moving through this is the high-end department store now. You can see they've got basically all the same stuff as the one just 1 block away. It's a totally, it's literally like all the same sorts of things, not necessarily the same stores, but you've got all the same stuff still present. Tons of prepared foods. You can see those we're walking through prepared foods now. Tons of ingredient sort of shops, and also tons of dessert-style shops. Lots of bento boxes. You can see those kind of over on the right there. And so, as Ginger moves through it, that on the left there is Maisen, pretty famous tonkatsu place. They do a lot of fried cutlets and stuff. There's Maisen again there on the left. And you've got sushi rolls on the right. You've got onigiri there on the right going by. Tons of stuff. There's a kimchi salesman. Fruit bar, so that's a good blended fruit bar. They just basically have blenders where they stuff fruit in it, and you can get it to go as a little drink in a cup, because, you might as well. So she's now kind of moving out of that area into more of the, I think she's going to go kind of back out into the prepared food section. Yep, so here's all the things where you can kind of grab little prepared foods by the gram. They'll scoop them out into a little plastic container for you there. And they have like tons of salads and tons of like meat sort of, hybrid meat salads or fishes and salads, that sort of thing. Okay. So now she's moving into some of the, looks like prepackaged stuff here. So she's got on the right there's like confections and stuff like that in bento boxes. Getting into more of the dessert style stuff here. To the right there, it looks like a bunch of chocolates. That might be a Godiva again. There's a Godiva in both of them, if I remember correctly, because you never can have too many Godiva outlets. Here you've got basically the sort of gift box section of the sweets, if you remember from the previous department store. So you can look and you can see there's all kinds of like sort of gift wrapped fancy dessert style stuff. Usually there's a variety. You can buy a box that's got a whole different, kind of a potpourri of dessert selections, if you will. And you can get them, depending on the store, they can be extremely expensive and extremely fancy wrapped, or they can just be pretty basic stuff that's not too expensive. So I think she's kind of going to move into the cake section here soon, if I'm not mistaken. Going through and, no, this actually looks like it's still going to be more wrapped desserts. So you can see a lot of them here. In fact, I don't know if you can see it over there on the left, but I think this one actually has a counter. Some places in department stores for really expensive gifts, they basically have a place that you sit down and discuss the bill, or I think also what is appropriate to give for different gifts. It's basically like a food gift consultation area. But anyway, so moving on. Now she's going to kind of walk back through, and mind you, for pretty much all of this, basically the last one and this one, she pretty much hasn't retread any of the same ground. Like, there's a couple times where we have to go back through something, or if we're flossing, then the corner store might be the same store as we loop around, but for the most part, pretty much 100% of this footage is all new stuff. And so you can see now she's heading down after having done partial loop through the Mitsukoshi. We're running out of time on the film here. Now she's going down to their supermarket. So you can see, again, this is a fancier department store, so their supermarket's even fancier than the other one. Again, they've got a wine store, they've got fishes, they've got prepared sushi in this one. Also, they've got their own meat section, 2 more bakers, all kinds of stuff down in this one. So it's a pretty fancy supermarket, as supermarkets go. Anyway, this hopefully has given you some idea of the crazy amount of food density that you can get in the basement, just the basements of department stores in Tokyo. Never mind restaurants and all the other kinds of food that you can get here, which is all pretty extensive and awesome. But just these department store basements are kind of a sight to behold, and hopefully you got a little bit of sense of that. And I would also remind you that these are just 2 and just in Ginza. There's actually tons more elsewhere in tons of different places.